All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our streaming TV webinar in the week after Thanksgiving here, right after the Black Friday, Cyber Monday rush. Good to have everyone here. I'm joined by a colleague and one of our partners from Mountain here, so really happy to have these guys here. We're going to kick things off in just a minute or two. We'll give it just like a minute for last minute people to trickle in, and I see people still joining. Yeah, see those numbers taken up there. We were just joking in the pre-webinar here that we look like we're all in the same room, but we're not. I think we're all in different states, right? I'm in Tennessee.
Yeah, I'm in California right now.
Yeah.
I'm in California.
Yeah, so totally different states, like not even the same time zone, but we look like we're in the same room. I'll turn my camera. I can see Patrick. But I guess that's good for consistency here.
Definitely.
Yeah. All right, we're up to 36 people here. So yeah, let's go ahead and kick it off. You already know why you're here. You're here to hear about these top streaming TV trends to know in 2024, specifically targeted at B2C marketers. So what does the landscape look like now? What trends are arising? What's in the future? And how can you leverage that as a B2C marketer? I'm joined by Patrick from our team and Isabel from the Mountain team. I'll let them each introduce themselves and talk a little bit about, why they are the expert to talk on this topic. So Patrick, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, thanks for the intro, Maggie. Hey everyone, my name is Patrick. Some of you I think I've met before, looking through some of those audience lists. For others, hope I work with you sometime in the future. I joined Rockerbox as a CSM this past year. Previously, I'd spent a couple of years as a client actually of Rockerbox on the client side, doing like growth marketing, paid acquisition, things like that. For a startup, and we were leveraging Rockerbox every day to do our tracking and measurement for all of our marketing data, and ended up sort of jumping over the fence, coming over here as we really like the product. And yeah, now starting to sort of dig in a little deeper on CTV specifically here at Rockerbox, and working with Mountain a lot more closely as well in the past year.
Awesome. And I'm Isabel Greenfield. I'm a content marketing manager at Mountain. I've been in the streaming industry for about the past 8 years. I started my career in streaming at Roku, and I've been at Mountain for the past 2. So very passionate about the CTV space.
That's awesome. I did not know that you were at Roku. It's very cool. I always forget to put myself on these slides because really the focus is our experts here. I'm the product marketing manager here. I get to do a lot of work between the product and marketing and sales teams. And one of the things I do is lead a lot of these webinars. So we're really just going to jump right into it. So Patrick, let's start with you to kind of set the scene in CTV and this space.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's sort of the way I'm thinking of these first couple of slides as well, just sort of setting the scene for how big this opportunity really is. I think a lot of us are familiar with it from, day-to-day experience with CTV, but once you start to look at sort of some of the viewership trends and the more recent growth trends, I do think it starts to put it into perspective when you think about it from like an advertising opportunity perspective. So yeah, the first trend I wanted to highlight here is just actually just the size of how popular CTV is. So going into 2024, CTV's growth and popularity is really clear and becoming clear, I think, by the day. Now at this point, with 50% of all TV viewership happening on CTV. So like I said, I think like intuitively when I was preparing for this presentation, it sort of seems like a no-brainer that, everyone's watching Netflix, Hulu. It sort of seems like it's been that experientially sort of for the last several years. But when you start to look at the numbers, it does really put things into perspective. So for example, from like May of 2022 to May of 2023, just over this past year, US households have increased the amount of CTV they're actually watching, boosting their total connected TV consumption by about 20% to now just over 11.5 billion hours of content streamed, which is like hard to wrap my head around, honestly, how much time people are spending in front of the TV watching all sorts of the different sort of like niche content now that's available sort of just at the click of a button. And that recent jump brought CTV viewership overall to more than half of all TV viewing time and actually surpassing linear TV. And I think one of the takeaways there for me is just that, that's a massive amount of really, really highly engaged attention that will eventually end up seeing the ads that we're running there alongside the content that they're really enjoying.
It's so crazy that that number is now like over 50%. Like I remember seeing numbers in the past where it was like, a third of, of the TV viewership. And that was, back when all I ever knew was just streaming. I'm a millennial, so all I watched was streaming ever. And then, that never matched up with like my experience, but now it is over half, which is pretty wild.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the opportunity is really huge. And I think that's sort of like a nice segue into the next point as well, which is, looking at sort of more the streaming video on demand subscribers continuing to grow to an estimated 1.25 billion by the end of 2024, which is double the number of 2020, sort of to Maggie's point of how quickly this is still growing. And I found this really compelling in light of sort of the previous point we just mentioned, where it sounds like it's so big and like mature already in terms of like viewership, but that audience is still continuing to increase like pretty rapidly and diversifying as well, as more people are sort of pouring into and like adjusting their viewing habits to sort of more fit what is available and what suits their interests. And so one other thing I'd just like to sort of add here is just for comparison that the number of like global pay TV subscribers surpassed 1 billion around like 2018. And just over the last couple of years, there's some really interesting opt-out sort of numbers from people who are cutting the cord from what's considered the more like traditional TV and moving into streaming video on demand. So like 3 million US pay TV customers opted out of a traditional bundle in 2018. That grew to 6 million in 2019, and then just about 7 million last year. And then so by the end of 2024, we're estimating about 50 million US households will have cut the cord and made that switch over from that traditional TV to the streaming video on demand. And I think a lot of those people who are still in the process of cutting the cord more formally are going to be people who are still conditioned sort of to seeing ads alongside their content, right? So I think these are people who are also going to be sort of more willing to see and more receptive to that sort of advertised material alongside their content, whereas some of the first movers were people, I'd say, I mean, I myself included, were people who are like, oh, if there's a world where I don't have to look at commercials, let it sign me up. I'll get on Netflix or whatever it might be. But obviously things are sort of changing now, and there's going to be all sorts of different viewers there that I think are available to connect with if you're a brand.
All right, so that's kind of where we're starting off the story, kind of the atmosphere right now. So I'm going to pass it over to Isabel to move us forward.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Maggie. Okay, so for trend number 4, this is specifically about viewership and ad spend on FAST networks. So FAST stands for free ad-supported streaming television. And our trend for 2024 is that it's going to continue to rise, especially early in next year. And there's a couple of reasons for that. The first is the Hollywood strikes. And you may be thinking, wait, aren't the strikes over? I thought we were done with all that. And they are, but production is going to be pretty slow to ramp up, especially since we're very firmly in the middle of the holiday season. We're expecting to see a limited release schedule over the next quarter. So really not seeing that ramp up of new content into Q2 2024 at the earliest. And like Patrick said, a lot of people watch TV a lot of different hours. So just because there's not anything new to watch doesn't mean that they are going to stop watching TV. This is the perfect time if maybe you missed something the first time around, or just going back to those comfort watches. I know personally, I could watch Schitt's Creek over and over again, never get tired. So people are rewatching. They're going to that comfort content. They're looking for vast back catalogs where they can really dig in. I know people are so excited when they find something with a lot of seasons or a lot of episodes per season that they can sit down and stream. So advertisers know that they're shifting their ad buys to really target the rewatching that their audience is doing. So according to a recent survey, ad spend for rerun content jumped to about 79%, where new content was only 21%. So that's the lowest it's been since the pandemic, and it's down 10% from May, which is when the writer's strike started. But what was surprising to me when I was digging into this is that actually traditionally rerun content has gotten a bigger piece of the pie than new content. So In the past about 7 years, rerun content accounts for about 59% of the ad spend, and 41% is that new content. So obviously that gap has grown as the new content has trickled off. But advertisers know that their audiences are rewatching. So if we think about people going to like Peacock to watch The Office or Friends on Max or Suits on Netflix, like how many weeks was Suits the #1 TV show on Netflix when it started? So people are there, they're watching. And this is like a really great way for advertisers to take advantage of those budgets early in the year when this new content isn't coming to light, to find their audience where they're watching. So FAST networks have a really extensive back catalog of this content, and it doesn't cost anything. So we saw, according to eMarketer in 2023, 57% of TV viewers watch content on a FAST channel. And according to Zumo and Comcast, 84% of advertisers are going to increase their investment in FAST in 2024. And I mentioned that there were kind of a couple reasons for this FAST increase. I think another one that we've been talking about too is that it's getting expensive to stream. So a lot of people cut the cord. They were paying hundreds of dollars a year to pay for cable with a lot of content that they didn't watch, in the hopes that they could just pay for a Netflix or a Hulu. But all of those have been increasing slowly over time, and they really add up. And now with the strikes, these channels are taking on a lot of costs that they're going to just pass right back to their customers. So we're already seeing news of those pricing increases. So FAST is a really great way for viewers to kind of supplement. You maybe already love Netflix and you know you love Hulu, but you don't have to spend for the others. You can kind of turn to a FAST, watch your favorite stuff for free. You're willing to sit through some of those ads. So in 2024, this could be a really great place for advertisers to find their audiences. Awesome. All right, so going on to trend number 5. Audience-first strategies will continue to prove themselves as a resilient way to mitigate the impact of CTV fragmentation as new streaming ad tiers are introduced. So what do we mean exactly by CTV fragmentation? Obviously, there are a ton of channels out there, a ton of streaming channels. So as CTV has continued to mature, the landscape is continuing to fragment. There are all these different channels that people are watching, and now we're adding on these new ad-supported tiers. So Netflix, Disney Plus, those are probably like the 2 biggest names that we've seen over the past year add in these less expensive ad-supported tiers, which is just further fragmenting the environment. An example I always love to use is Amazon. So Amazon had their FAST channel Freevee. They also have Prime Video. Now they've announced that they're going to be having an ad-supported tier on Prime Video. So that's a bunch of different audiences. So if we look at it maybe from like a Netflix perspective, Netflix used to have one audience. They had an SVOD audience. They were paying. They weren't reachable by ads because there were no ads on Netflix. Then they added this new fragmented tier of ad-supported streaming. And all of a sudden, from an advertiser's perspective, maybe you were only buying on Hulu. You didn't have to think about Netflix in the past. All of a sudden, you're kind of like, oh, wait, now there's this other offering out here, and you have to weigh that in your strategy. So what we really recommend is starting with an audience-first strategy. And what audience-first means is that you are targeting someone based on their attributes, whether that's their interests, their demographics, their geography, their income levels. You're targeting them based on these things wherever they're watching. So you can reach them as they jump from channel to channel. You don't have to worry as much about those individual buys. One caveat here is this is not like 100% foolproof strategy, because obviously there's always going to be a walled garden. If you want to buy Netflix, you're going to have to go to Netflix. But in 2024, if you start that baseline on an audience-first strategy and supplement from there, we really think that's the best way to go.
Awesome. That's such great advice. And really, we wouldn't be, this trend webinar wouldn't be complete without an AI question, AI trend here. So I love if you could dive into this one as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's amazing we made it halfway through the trends without talking about AI, because obviously that's really been the story of the year. And for that trend for 2024, we really think that AI technology is going to continue to evolve, and advertisers are going to find new ways to integrate it into their workflow to support their teams. So, like I said, it has been obviously the top headline of 2023, I would say, across many industries. What's interesting is that advertising and marketing industries probably had the fastest adoption of this technology. So according to a survey, about 73% report that they're already using generative AI in their workflows, which is really great. And maybe you're sitting there thinking like, I don't use AI, but you probably do and you don't even realize. So AI is probably already a part of your back end. If you think about audience targeting, if you think about auto optimization, that is AI at work for you. And a lot of B2B advertisers specifically use AI technology in the use of like a chatbot or website analysis. So AI is already part of your workflow, even if it's maybe not an intentional part of your workflow yet. But less than a quarter of B2B brands are using AI from like a generative AI perspective in their day-to-day. So before I get into like exactly what that means, I just want to caution that AI isn't here for your job. It's not going to replace you. It's not going to replace your creative team. It really still takes that human touch. If you were just to like kick back and let AI do everything for you, it would be pretty low impact. First of all, it really needs a creative input to produce a creative output. And the other thing I always caution is AI can only put out something it's already crawled. It can't make anything new. It's just an amalgamation of everything that it's seen on the internet. So it really takes that human touch to transform it into something new and unique. But from a generative AI perspective, I live in the content world, so I'm going to take it from that perspective. AI can be a really great jumping off point. So I know for me in my day-to-day, I hate nothing more than a blank page. AI is a really great way to kind of give you some of those ideas, a starting point, or conversely, maybe you have everything and you really just want to put a button on it. You can turn to AI to generate some CTAs. How do I tie this up and give a really great call to action? From a creative perspective, perhaps you have a limited budget for creative or limited time from your team. I'm someone who works in words and not pictures, but I can use those words in AI, put it into my tool of choice, and have a jumping off point from an image perspective to send to my team to alleviate some of that day-to-day stress. And then I think another thing I would be remiss not to talk about is video. Obviously, we're big proponents of video, and AI is going to be a really helpful tool to take those assets you already have and update them. We know the importance of refreshing your creative. So whether that's adding new music, adding a voiceover, switching out your CTA to speak to your different offerings, AI is going to be a really great tool to help you with that. And I think in 2024, more companies are going to iron out how that works in their day-to-day life.
All right. And so I know, Isabel, you touched on this a little bit, but Patrick, I'd love if you could focus a little bit more on these ad-supported tiers.
Yeah, so more subscription video services are offering ad-supported tiers. Disney, Netflix, Amazon, Roku, a lot of these really big players are now introducing or have recently introduced ad-supported tiers, which is somewhat of like a departure, I think, of from what most people think of as a streaming television, which is like a bit of, or streaming services, which are a bit of like a haven from commercials if you're paying that subscription. And I think more players in this space will join in 2024. And I think this sort of, there's a couple reasons I think this makes sense for these businesses, sort of like why now is this happening. One is I think like pretty fundamentally focusing more on profitability. It's like ad revenue is going to be a great way to help generate revenue for the company, especially as people, I think, are becoming a little more loud about sort of the price of what the subscription rates are, right? So yeah, the other sort of flip side of that will be providing more choice for customers who don't respond favorably to the subscription rate increases, but would still, like to stay on the platform, continue seeing the content, and maybe don't mind seeing ads every now and then. And I think in light of sort of what we spoke about a little bit earlier in this presentation with sort of this wave of cord cutters still coming in from like linear TV who are conditioned to sync commercials all the time. Makes it perhaps a little bit of like a more seamless transition as well for them, and that's it's going to be a receptive audience still coming in to see these ads that are going to be showed on these subscription services.
All right, and so there's not only more ad-supported tiers, there's more options for ads. So talk about that.
Yeah, this one's interesting. I think, CTV ads are becoming more interactive and allowing viewers to make purchases directly from their CTV devices. This is certainly something that's different than sort of the consumption behavior that's happening on like a regular linear television set as we think about it. Sort of you see the commercial and you have to remember it, and maybe in the store or online you go and search it and find it. Whereas with a connected device, you have much more, I'd say it's more high touch, so you can actually engage with the medium itself, and in some cases have the opportunity to sort of buy sort of on the spot. And there are, for example, I think Roku has partnered with like Walmart to integrate shoppable ads into its platform, which, the idea being enabling viewers to become customers by purchasing directly through that CTV device for Roku. You see Amazon obviously moving into like they had the first Black Friday video game this year. And it's sort of like commercial bonanza frenzies centered all around that. And the idea is we want you on Amazon. We want you, as close as possible to like the purchase button alongside the content that you're seeing. And, I think some of this, I'm still very curious to see how it plays out in terms of behavior. I'm not personally a big believer in like the QR code on the screen or something like that. So I think that innovation is going to be really key to sort of unlocking this, but I do think it does present a pretty unique opportunity to sort of convert people pretty close to on the spot after seeing compelling ad.
Yeah, and with anything like that, testing I imagine is important to see.
Absolutely.
And so we're kind of going to move into that space in this next trend here regarding kind of measurement of CTV and how you actually measure the impact. So I'll pass it to Isabel.
Yeah, thank you. So for trend number 9, we're talking about incrementality reporting. Combining that with an accurate and reliable attribution model will allow brands to get a more holistic understanding of the total impact of their CTV efforts. So this is something that we've seen in surveys this year specifically that marketers feel like maybe they need a little bit more education about, understanding attribution, understanding the impact of their CTV buy specifically, because obviously to us, CTV is a performance channel, but there are a variety of efforts that people are putting into their performance strategy. So we want to make sure that people feel like they can understand the impact of each of their investments, specifically how much is CTV causing a lift versus what you would have really gotten anyway. So that's where incrementality reporting comes in. So it offers you a singular view of the conversions of the revenue driven by CTV alongside the results that you would have seen anyway. And that delta, that difference, is going to show you that true lift of CTV. What did CTV actually generate for you? And why that's so important is it allows marketers to really understand what CTV is driving, why they're spending their budget there, to make effective optimizations in the future when they're planning their budget for 2024 and beyond, making sure that CTV is an adequate part of that pie. And like I mentioned, attribution. I know Rockerbox is all about attribution, but that's why it's really important to have a strong attribution model. When you're looking at those numbers, you want to make sure that those results were driven by CTV and not maybe like your social ads, right? That's why we created verified visits at Mountain. So we're not taking credit for anything that perhaps some of your other efforts drove. So we validate the source of any visit. If it doesn't happen directly or organically, if it was driven by another media source, we don't take credit for that. So when you're looking at those numbers, you're looking at your incrementality reporting, you can feel really confident that was truly CTV increasing and driving that lift. So I think in 2024, people are going to be perhaps a little bit more heads up about this, asking the right questions, making sure that they're working with partners who are going to give them that true data so they can understand make optimizations and like make really educated choices in their advertising.
Awesome. And we didn't plan this question. I'm going to put Patrick on the spot here really quick. So you did mention, Rockerbox is all about attribution. I'd love, Patrick, if you could talk a little bit about kind of our approach to that, specifically how, you see the impact of CTV, but also in the context of the larger marketing journey and all of the different channels in your strategy.
Yeah. So sort of just speaking about like what role CTV is playing against some of the other channels that we're running. Yeah, it's a good question. I think obviously sort of what all of these trends sort of beg the question for me is like, it's great. There's going to be a lot more flexibility and opportunity to track how are we actually taking advantage of it. It all sounds really great in theory, but if you're a marketer and you want to see actually what's working for you and what's effective, the priority is going to be trackability and having that like easily measured and interpretable. And I think that is where Rockerbox comes in and plays a role there, where we're tracking like your OTT activity and of course on CTV. One thing I would say in the last couple of months, it seems to be coming up is like testing into CTV is potentially like a top of funnel tactic, and seeing how it is attracting like new eyeballs and sort of working as like a discovery tool. People leveraging like our marketing paths view within our journey product to see how that discovery touch point is then sort of feeding into other more like what I'd consider to be like supporting touch points on that customer journey as they continue to sort of learn about the brand that they were introduced to via CTV. And then in some cases, of course, their last touch point before converting might also be seeing like another CTV ad, maybe they're retargeted or something like that. But in other cases, it might lead to one particular sort of bottom of funnel conversion channel that you're also running that sort of works to finally sort of capitalize on all of that that marketing that you've done over the last maybe week or two, that the customer is sort of engaging with your content and your advertisements.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. No, thanks. That was great. Put you on the spot there. All right. And one more trend here. So Isabel, you mentioned briefly there, connected TV being a performance channel. So why don't you close us off with the last trend here?
Absolutely. This is one we're definitely very passionate about, that CTV is going to continue to prove itself as a performance channel, just as strong as search and social that I know a lot of people rely on, but it's just going to be way more brand safe. So if you think about TV of past, like a linear TV, that was always really high impact, but high upper funnel solution. It was brand awareness. Obviously, the TV screen is not clickable. But CTV has changed that because it has the same digital roots as your favorite platform, whether that's social or search, and the same benefits of that, whether that's precision audience targeting, extensive measurement on the back end, reliable attribution like we talked about. So coupled together, it's a really powerful platform. And a lot of these partners, including us, will give you access to premium inventory. So think about channels that you know the name of. We've talked about Peacock. You think about like a CNN, and having your ads run there versus some long tail uncertain channel like the belly dancing channel, which is a real channel. You can really be sure that you're running in this brand safe environment when you're working with a partner that has premium inventory. And you can really still deliver that impressive performance ability. Last quarter, we saw 7.5x return on ad spend for our advertisers, but in a really brand safe way. You don't need to be putting yourself out there into some of the more unsavory places. And you can also get really specific and really target your audiences like we've talked about. Similar to what you would do with Facebook or Meta advertising, you can target based on a number of different data points. I mentioned some of them before, but interest, affinity, geography, demographic, that's all available to you. And you can have extensive reporting on if that's working, how that's working. So not only are you going to see the number of impressions served against all of those audiences, but you can see the performance data against all of those. Here at Mountain, even if it's within the same campaign, you can see how different audiences perform. And that allows you to get super tactical when you're looking at your strategy for the new year. You can see who's converting, who could you maybe spend a little bit more money targeting, maybe who's not hitting and you don't need to be spending as much. And that allows you to really push the needle and make CTV a really powerful performance channel so that you can continue to feel confident, drive those KPIs into the new year.
All right, awesome. Well, thanks, guys. We're going to move on to the Q&A portion. I want to start out with a question here for now that every streaming service is supporting ads, isn't there a risk that viewers will get sick of seeing them everywhere? Will CTV ads remain effective when you can't escape them? That's a good question.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think Patrick actually kind of hit on this a little bit earlier, but people are not as averse to ads as that maybe we think. We've seen in a lot of the research that if ads are properly targeted, if they're of interest to people, they are more okay with kind of that trade of, you give me great content, I'll sit through a little bit of advertising to watch it. So just some numbers here. Viewers are 80% more likely to pay attention to CTV ads, which is really impressive. And 60% of viewers would rather see those customized ads, like I mentioned, that are specifically targeted to them, that are of interest to them, than something not targeted. So if we think about the mix of streaming services that people are investing in across a bunch of different channels and a bunch of different days, we're not so concerned that people are going to get burnt out on their advertising. Instead, I think people are going to spend the time to watch their favorite shows like we talked about. And one other thing I always say is, like, how long does it take for you to pick something when you sit down on the couch? It takes, I think I read somewhere that the average is like 7 minutes of streaming or sorting through all these streaming channels. So by the time you pick something, you're not going to back out because you see a few advertisements, right? You've finally settled on what you're watching, and you can watch a few ads before or during that content. So I think advertising is maybe not as disruptive as we have thought about it in the past, and people are willing to make that exchange.
Awesome. All right, next question here, and both of you can feel free to weigh in on this. When attributing how do advertisers who have traditionally been on linear TV justify spending on streaming, given that CPMs are 5 to 6 times higher? My understanding is that it's hard to make it ROI positive. So interesting question there. Yeah, go ahead, Patrick.
Yeah, I can jump in on that first. I think that's a really good question. It's one that's coming up. I know myself sort of when I was researching this, and we're getting it from other clients as well, where sort of the cost of getting these impressions are understandably quite a bit higher than maybe some alternatives or platforms they've currently or previously been running on. I would say sort of the angle there, or the lens I would use there to think about how to make it worth it, is that CTV offers probably a lot more flexibility in terms of measurement and sort of nimbleness in terms of adjusting like targeting strategies than something like on linear TV might, where like sort of your freedom of movement to adjust and iterate your approach to marketing is going to help you make up, you're not going to sit in inefficiency, I think, as long as you may on other channels, or maybe take a little longer to turn the boat, right? And of course, we're biased because we're Rockerbox, but I think one of sort of like the key things when you're talking about launching a new channel, especially something that's still sort of like developing like CTV, there are these higher CPMs, and they're all these sort of like fancy, targeting audience opportunities. It's going to be really critical if you're testing into that channel to have reliable tracking and measurement to be able to make decisions as quickly as possible so that you're not wasting money, and you're using it sort of in the most meaningful way to find your audience. And yeah, that's sort of what I would recommend there. It is true that the CPMs are higher there, but I think there's a lot more workability there in terms of your options for attribution and measurement in order to overcome sort of those and unlock that value that we see in that engaged audience.
Yeah, I'm going to add there that ability to track those down funnel metrics, like you mentioned, Patrick, that linear TV is traditionally much more of an upper funnel awareness play. So if you're looking to CTV to drive performance, that's what it's going to be really great at. And you can track those key KPIs and really know what your return on investment is, and in near real time, not having to wait for those like quarterly reports back.
Awesome. Great answers there. Another question here, and this is for Rockerbox. I know my ads are being seen because completion rates for ads on CTV are near 100%, but how do I know whether those views are contributing to a purchase on my website? Okay, yeah, great question.
Yeah, I think we've touched on this a little bit sort of in the last couple of answers, but I think, again, like, one of the things as an advertiser you start to think about when you have these new opportunities is sort of, okay, say I make the decision to want to sort of move forward here with trying this new channel. How do I know I'm actually making a difference for my business, right? And I think that is where Rockerbox does play a really important part of tracking all of the marketing touch points, including CTV, that your customer has across all of the channels you're marketing on, and stitching together that customer path to purchase that gives you sort of a full worldview of where your customer is discovering your brand and then when they're actually deciding to make the purchase. And, being able to see cross-channel, cross-device customer pathway data, I think, is going to be really key to validating the impact of things like those higher CPMs that we just spoke about, and more of the advanced targeting capabilities that do come with running CTV campaigns. And yeah, so, with more opportunity, that does sort of encourage, I think, more discipline and focus on validating testing on this channel, where people still have some sort of questions to answer as they go into testing how to make it work the best for them.
Awesome. All right, next question here off of the AI topic for Isabel. What are some of the current limitations of AI tools from a creative perspective?
Great question. The first thing that comes to mind when I hear that question, and I don't know if everyone's seen this meme, but the salmon in the stream meme, someone was using AI to create an image of salmon in a stream, and instead of a fish, it was just like a piece of, like, a fillet of salmon. So I think that's just like a really good analogy that AI is not always going to get it right. It's still very early days in terms of what AI is capable of. When we think about like the expanse of the human mind versus what AI has been able to accomplish in the past year, obviously it's accomplished a lot. And we're seeing how rapidly it's growing, but it's still not without its limitations. And also, like I mentioned before, AI is really only as good as the input that you give it. I know we've played with it a lot on our end. The things that come out can be really great and also really questionable. So it really takes that human touch. So I think instead of thinking of it as like a all-inclusive solution to your creative problems, I think it's a really great jumping off point. It's a place to kind of jog your own creativity, a place to kind of start the process, but it really takes that human touch to elevate it into something workable, something accurate, and something unique.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, guys. And I think that's the last of our questions. So thank you both for co-hosting today. Oh, I got a little echo there. I don't know where that came from. Just a ghost echo. So yeah, thank you guys for co-hosting. And also just to everyone, keep an eye out for more collaboration with Rockerbox and Mountain. We have some exciting stuff coming out in the next couple months regarding our integration and other ways you can leverage those. So keep an eye out for that. Isabel, Patrick, thank you guys so much. This was great.
Thank you.
Yeah, and hope everyone enjoyed this. We'll send out a recap today or tomorrow, and hope to see you all again on another webinar. All right.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.